Hello, everybody. Welcome. We'll just let everybody come on in. Hey, guys. I can see a couple people waving. Feel free to write in the chat um, who you are, where you're from. Hello. We'll be kicking off very shortly with Kylie and Caro. Hello, Kira. I feel like I'm on one of those. I don't know whether you guys watch those gaming people on Twitch and things like that. Like I'm talking to the chat and then I'll start playing some Super Mario or something like that. And you can all watch me play. That's weird. Oh, hey, King Valley, Victoria. Nanette, hello. Hello, Susan. Ah, so cool. You guys are from everywhere. Northern Beaches, Petra, hello. Amanda from Morridale. Rule, Victoria. That's my from Gippsland, so originally that's where I'm from. Swan Bay, Tassie, nice. Hey guys, Sky. Newly independent Wentworth, very nice. Brant. Brant, yes, I know you have your pie. Now you inspired me to bring something to tonight's proceedings. I thought it was good. I thought I'd have a beer. This is look, we're all at home. We're in a library sort of, but really we're in our homes. We can relax and enjoy a beverage. And so I've brought this beer, which I thought was fitting. Crisp lager. I feel like this is fitting. I'm not sure anyone's felons, but I'm going to enjoy a beer while we. I just feel like it was a pubby kind of evening. You know what I mean? I better introduce the people. Sorry, I better introduce our guests because I can see Kara's talking in the chat here. So, hello. Let me introduce our wonderful guests and we'll get on to our wonderful chat this afternoon, this evening. So, first of all, we have Kylie. Kylie Stevenson, 17 years experience as a journalist, work appearing in newspapers, magazines, websites all over the country, and The Guardian, The Australian, The Weekend Australian Magazine. She is very well read, well researched, well spoken. Hello, Kylie. Welcome, Kylie, everybody.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming.
And in a first for Ben's book club, we've got two authors today. So we have Caroline Graham. She's worked as a newspaper reporter, magazine writer, and now teaches journalism at UQ. She has also facilitated the publication of major student-authored investigative packages in The Guardian, Australia, News Corp, APN, Australian Regional Media, and Crikey. So, Caroline, everyone say hello to Kylie and Caroline.
Thanks for being here, everyone.
Yeah, it's cool. We've got a lot of people here. This is great. Great turnout for a great book. Um, yeah, sorry. I should have hit you up about the bringing of a beer. I feel like this should be the vibe, right? We're in a pub all together.
We'll just watch on
Jealous-
longingly as you
jealously
sob
watch.
your-
Yeah.
We drank too many beers writing this book, ate
That's
too many
true.
schnitzels.
Well, I wanted to start with, I think, probably the most important question of the evening. What was the strangest pie flavor that you ate in France? Did you ever
Okay, we
try?
have a confession.
Did you no? Did you ever try the camel?
We did not. We haven't ever eaten a pie at France.
And it wasn't an active choice, actually.
Are you sure?
The thing is, it's not a very long walk over to France. It's only a couple of 100 meters, but it is so hot in Larrimah that we've tried to always do it in the morning.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I don't know what time of day is the cutoff for like when it's too early to eat a camel mince pie. But I reckon anything pre 11 a.m. is too early for camel.
I think is there ever a right time for but you've never tasted camel like that? I feel like if you're out there in, getting into the vibe of the town and stuff like that. I thought you might have tried the camel, but I can 100% understand why you didn't.
We usually opt for the scones when we're at Fran's. There's a pretty good scone there, so
Really
it's
nice.
more of a breakfast vibe about it,
And did I hear right? I heard on the rumor mill that Fran no longer is the runner of Fran's. Is that correct? She doesn't own Fran's.
Yeah, that's right. Fran left a couple of years ago. She left Larrimah to go down to Melbourne for medical treatment, and she's been there ever since. Her grandson, Brent, has been running the tea house. He's a delightful young man. We've spent quite a bit of time with him, and he makes a great scone, actually.
Did he maintain the actual camel mince pie, and I think there was a buffalo pie? Does he maintain all that stuff as well?
He's doing buff and crocodile and stuff. I'm not sure about camel specifically. He was
He's
doing
always-
his own spin was a spaghetti bolognese pie, which apparently is great.
Yeah, he's always at us to try this spaghetti bolognese pie.
They're really breaking ground over there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Just a reminder to everyone in the chat, if you're new here, this is Ben's Book Club. We're really encouraging all of you. If you have questions at all, I'll be reading out your questions to our wonderful panelists today. But if you've had any experience of going to Fran's or anything like that as well, or just any knowledge of Larrimah, we'd love to hear from you as well. I'm going to start with a big question here, and this is just something that struck me because as I was rereading the book, I feel like there's a lot in the Australian pub that really is... The Australian pub obviously is an Australian icon, right? And you have British pubs, but then the Australian pub, there's something uniquely Australian about the Australian pub. What do you think is captured in sort of our national character within the confines of that iconography of the Australian pub? What about the Australian pub is so Australian, do you think?
Look, I mean, certainly in the outback, like a pub isn't just a pub. Like it's doing so many things. It's a post office, it's the local shop, it's selling souvenirs, it's a zoo, it's a museum. But like also for people on surrounding stations and stuff, like it's also where they come to get their news, to gossip about other people. And I reckon one of the big things is just the stories that get told. Just this place where, you only have to have the most tenuous of links and someone will start telling you an incredible yarn about, treasure hunting or buried World War II stuff or self-decapitating emus or a ghost in a Model T they saw out the back once. Or, I mean, we spent a lot of time in pubs and it's the stories that make them incredible, I reckon.
Yeah. Do you feel like we kind of miss that in our day-to-day busy workaday lives? Like just speaking from my own experience, like I don't remember the last time I've had a really great conversation with a person and actually heard a story. Do you think the pub is like the perfect venue for those stories to come to life?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's relaxed and having a good time, enjoying a beer as you are tonight.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that the stuff that spills out in a place like Larrimah is probably maybe not more extraordinary than what you would find elsewhere, but certainly, if you can head outside the cities and head into those rural and remote areas and visit those kind of pubs, those are the people who, they see someone arrive and they're like, oh, great. Someone who hasn't heard my stories that I've been telling for 50 years.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Come on over. Let me show you this thing on my phone where I took photos of crop circles. So, I think that it's something that we probably do miss a little bit when we're in cities. And there is that thing that we write about in the book where the remoteness is both the appeal and the problem. People feel excited about this remote pub in the middle of nowhere and it's this icon and it's, part of Australia, but also driving 8 hours for a beer is not really how you want to spend your weekend, I suppose.
No. Yeah, I grew up in rural Victoria, and so I do remember the pub being quite a different sort of feeling to the pubs that are up here in Queensland, because I live nearer to Brisbane City. But up here, when you go to the pub, you sort of just keep to your little
Mm.
circle, and you get your beers. You might have a chat, but you have to. It's not as maybe social as the pub in country towns. Like I remember the country town I grew up in, which is in Yarram, Victoria. It was just wall to wall characters, and you would walk in and you would just know everybody, and everybody treated everybody the same way, even though that was kind of bad sometimes. I don't know. Yeah, I guess reading your book made me miss all that stuff. I guess it made me miss having an interest and a curiosity in people's stories, which is, everything in your book. You're so interested in all these different characters and all the different ways that these characters' stories collide and whose story is more accurate. But yeah, I guess I wanted to just say, you made me miss being a social person, I guess. Um, so, can you take us on the journey of how you two came to actually be such great collaborators? I mean, you've written a book together. I imagine that's kind of like being married to a person for a short period of time, that intensity of relationship. So, how did you two get to know each other and then come to write a book like this one?
So we actually worked together in a little newsroom in North Queensland up in Mackay, the Daily Mercury, and we're friends kind of as part of that, and just stayed in touch. We've done like writing retreats together, and so Kylie has an interesting yarn about how she got to Larrimah the first time, but it's really funny with the collaboration. I think everyone always asks that question a little bit carefully, like how was it writing a book with someone else?
Well, I think we expect like some throwdown arguments about, this sentence doesn't work and laptops go through windows, but that's not what it was like.
But like, Ben, I mean, you've written a book on your own. Like, it's pretty hard and pretty lonely. And it is so nice to have someone else in the thick of it with you. And like, one thing we always say is, like, you get obsessed. I mean, this has been what, 4 years now, Kylie, and like we've just gone down every rabbit hole imaginable, and we have been banging on about this town in the middle of nowhere to everyone who will listen for 4 years, but like nobody cares as much as Kylie. Like, it doesn't matter, like the tiniest little lead, I can call her up and I know she's going to be as invested as I am. It was super fun to write together, and I feel like I learned heaps. Like, Kylie's hilarious and she's a great writer, and she expands my writing in different ways. And I don't know, maybe it's like, I don't know if it's like a marriage, but I reckon it's the closest you can get to actually being inside someone else's thought process, because we're in a document together a lot of the time, and you're actually almost seeing a thought happen in someone else's head. It's really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's interesting, because I guess even in the tightest of marriages, I mean, you're still talking with each other, but like you say, you actually sort of mind melded together, which is pretty incredible. Kylie, how did you come to this story and to write this tale of Larrimah?
So I first went to Larrimah in 2016 to do a writing retreat, which sounds a bit weird. It is a bit weird. The NT Writers Centre, there was an author up here in Darwin. His name was Andrew McMillan, and he wrote all these fantastic books. The Intruder's Guide to Arnhem Land is one of his well-known titles. And when he passed away, he left some money to the Writers Centre to establish this retreat in Larrimah, because he used to go there and write and used to, I don't know, find some sort of inspiration there. He loved the place so much, he actually ended up being buried there. And I went with Paddy, actually, and Barry Sharp, the old publican, to put the tombstone on his grave, because no one had done that. Yeah, there's photos of us out there in this tiny bush cemetery. There's, I think, 5 graves there.
Wow.
And yeah, we went out there and put this tombstone on. Now we've been out there again since, Cara and I, to help put up the tombstone for Barry Sharp's grave. He had sadly passed away.
I'm sorry, I didn't know he'd passed away. When did that happen, can I ask?
Barry passed away. He sold the pub, and he remained in Larrimah for a little bit longer, but he was pretty unwell.
Yeah.
And yeah, he passed away in when would it have been, Caro? 2019? It was just before COVID.
Yeah, it would have been then. Yeah. Late in the year.
Oh, that's sad. It's kind of sweet that he's been memorialized in your book, though. Hey.
Yeah, and his daughter is just a lovely woman, and we've met her a few times along the way. And yeah, she always has really nice things to say about the book, because it's kind of this story of her dad's that no one else had written down in all those years, which is really special and important, and part of the reason we did this.
That's lovely.
Yeah, so I did this writing retreat, and I found the place really interesting, found the people really interesting. I met Paddy. He would sort of be at the pub most afternoons having a beer, and I'd sit and have a yarn with him. Everyone who came in there just completely fascinated me. So I sort of came away, and actually while I was there, I was messaging Caro. There's no mobile reception in Larrimah, but there is some Wi-Fi at the pub, and I was just messaging her the whole time with these extraordinary stories. And I sort of came away from there and decided that I'd like to do more. So I wrote a bit about the place, and then I was pitching a podcast. I was in the process of just pitching a podcast about this funny little town and the people who live there and its history. And in the process of pitching that, Paddy disappeared, and it sort of all became a bit more urgent. So yeah, Caro, I was very thankful when I called her in the middle of, or the very pointy end of her PhD, and said, can you please come and do this with me? And yeah, it was really great working together. Like Caro said, I learned so much working with her and just trusted her completely. And it was really fun when we were in that document together, because I'd be writing and I'd be thinking, oh, I wonder how she's going to react. I think I've got something good here. And you're kind of writing it, and then we'd be on the phone at the same time, and then I'd hear her laugh or something, or, say that she liked a line I'd written.
That's amazing. It's sort of like you're sort of like musicians, aren't you? You're sort of composing at the same time, and someone came up with a nice riff and the other one likes the riff. Oh, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's
And
that's
conversely, though, like Caro would sometimes be like, that is crap. And
Yeah.
I would just go,
that.
and like normally that kind of thing would really wound me, but I'd just be like, yeah, okay, I believe you. Like, you're a really good writer, and you know what you're doing. If you say it's crap, it must be crap. So to go.
Yeah,
and
you have trust too, right? Like, and I'm sure there's enough
totally.
bank in like enough encouragement over all the years that you've known each other, where you go, okay, yeah, well, that might have been crap.
Yeah.
It's a bit easy to get to that point. I'd like to read up a couple of things that people have said here, because there's a lot of people are really expressing how much they love the book. There's a quote, there's a thing here from, there's a lot of talk about they want a TV or film, TV show or a film based on Larrimah. Jackie Weaver as Fran, Brandt is saying. I think that's
good casting. Yeah,
brilliant piece of casting. Yeah. Bush pubs are very friendly. And this person here said, Vida said, I haven't read the book yet, but now I really want to. So yeah, it's awesome. I think it's actually available on the Libby app until the end of the month as a free. Anyone can loan it at the same time. So no matter how many people have it, you can borrow it that way if you're interested in reading it. John said, you two just bounced ideas off each other so well. Susan said, Larrimah, I love the book. Larrimah pub reminds me of a pub we stayed in just off Stewart Highway. I think that seems to be a lot of the reaction, is that you made it feel. It's interesting, isn't it, that Larrimah is so unique, but then it also feels like every country town in Australia. We're really, I think, fascinated as a country in those rural pubs at the moment, and rural places. It seems to be a lot in crime fiction as well. Why do you think Australia is particularly interested at the moment in these small town stories?
I mean, I guess in a crime context, I think we kind of have a deeply held, whether it's the suspicion of the Australian landscape. It's such a harsh place. It's such a lonely place. But I think that sort of sense of darkness about it is also countered by this sort of weird collective ownership we have over it. Even
like we're proud of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that idea of existing despite your surroundings, I think, is very, very part of the Australian psyche.
Sorry, I'm laughing because Nicole said we're interested because there's so many places to hide a body. I don't know whether you saw that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, it's part of this case too, because the landscape is so harsh. Like, that is very much part of it, is that it's really difficult to pin down an answer out there. But I think we also have this nostalgia for a simpler time, and it's really representative of that. Like, it's been one of the really nice things about working on this is people just keep coming up and telling us their stories about incredible people they knew, whether it's, you know, uncles or family members or a place they went to on holiday, or and that's been really, really nice to kind of hear all of those yarns too.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's go back a little bit to. I want to talk about the podcast because it was a massive success. It won a Walkley Award in 2018, I think. But why did you choose to make the podcast first? And was it a really fun experience to go and collect those real life interviews and to put them all together? Like, what was it like making the podcast together?
Yeah, I think my initial idea that a podcast was the right medium was because when I was down there that first time, everyone's voices were just so unique. And I just feel like we don't really hear those kind of stories as much as we should, particularly from older Australians. Everyone in Larrimah, almost everyone, is over the age of sort of 70. And they just lived these huge lives that were just really interesting. And and I felt that the best way to tell that story was for them to tell it themselves in their own words.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the idea behind the podcast initially. And I think we had a lot of fun doing it. It's a very different way of writing. We were on the tightest deadline you can imagine. We went down there, recorded all the interviews, wrote it, produced it, and had it out within the space of 5 weeks, Caro, something like that.
Maybe a little less.
I thought you were going to say 5 months then, and I was going to be astounded at that. 5 weeks? Oh my gosh.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No, It's not ideal. Like, Caro was still working on her PhD. I had a 5-month-old baby. It was very bad time for both of us.
It's quite remarkable that you put it, like, it's so well done. It's so well produced. Like, that's remarkable.
Thank you. Yeah, it didn't, at the time, it just felt pretty, I don't know, pretty horrific, really. We were working sort of 15, 16-hour days and then just getting up and doing it again. I remember this one day where we were trying to fix something we'd done in an episode, and I was like breastfeeding and crying, and Caro was on trying to get out the door to get to a meeting she had to go.
No.
It was not, it was not smooth sailing, but it was definitely fun. And particularly, obviously, the time down there in Larrimah, we spent a week there. As I said, I had a very small baby. My husband came and cared for him, and we'd go and do an interview, and then I'd duck back and breastfeed him, hand him back over, off we'd go again. And he came on a few of the interviews with us. And that was a really cool, great time. We really, really enjoyed spending all that time there with all those people.
Yeah, and what an adventure too to have with your family, right? Like, you guys will take that with you. It's the parts of our lives that get so messy sometimes are also the adventurous, strange things that you remember when you're a bit older, hey?
Yeah.
Can I ask, have you heard from the residents? Have you heard from them since the release of the book? What were their thoughts? Anyway, we'll get into how you've painted them because I think you've done a really awesome job at it. But first of all, what are their thoughts? What did they think of your book?
So for the most part, like, people who'd been involved in the process, we did offer them the opportunity to read their section. Some people had read the whole book. So we're really transparent about what we were doing, and reasonably consultative. And then after the book was published, we launched it in Darwin and then drove down together with our 11 copies and handed one out to everyone.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so look, for the most part, they've been so generous and supportive and warm about the whole process. Kylie already mentioned kind of Barry's family and their, I guess, happiness that there's been a record there. But I think maybe across most residents, like, they all have these rich lives and these incredible stories. And Paddy's disappearance is obviously something substantial that's happened in the town, but it, for many of them, is not the only thing that's happened in their lives. And they've all got these, just incredible stories to tell in their own right as well. And so I think maybe because they are all getting on in years, and there is a sense that is a record of their personal history too, which is something that was part of the urgency for us in capturing this.
Yeah, it's a really I think it's a really kind and generous thing to do that, to hear a person's story. Like whenever I've been at like a writer's thing and being interviewed or something, I always come away from stage and I always find there's a whole host of people who just want to talk to you and want somebody to listen and sort of maybe, I mean, this is a strong word, but maybe like validate what their experience is and just to hear their story. And it's really cool that you have taken these 11/12 people and then you've memorialized them in this way. Like it must feel very validating to the people that you've put into your book. It's just struck me then that that's a really kind thing to do. You not only heard
also,
their stories.
Like, for us, it was great. Like they were so generous, and like these aren't dull stories. Like, it's
no, that's a fair
every time
point.
I walked into someone's house, they'd be like, "Oh, like one of our favorite stories in the book. It's not a huge spoiler, but Carl and Bobby Roth, who live across the road from the pub, we'd probably been to see them like I don't know 8-10 times, and every time we go to see them, they just pull out another story that like anyone else would like play as their first card, just be like, this is the best story that's ever happened. But they told us this great story about how they were out. Carl was like clearing out the fish pond and he like moved all these lilies and the fish was starting to disappear and they couldn't work out what was happening. So he's parted these lilies and there is like quite a substantial crocodile in their fish pond. And so what they think happened is someone threw it over the fence as a prank and they hadn't noticed for a good number of years and it had grown quite big. So he calls like, national parks and he's like, you've got to come, and Parks and Wildlife, you've got to come and get this crocodile. And they're like, yeah, no worries, we'll be there on Wednesday. And he's like, we go to Catherine for our shopping on Wednesday. So he's tied it up on a dog lead, put it in the driveway, and then put the sprinkler on it so that they can go out for the day. So like you're just at someone's house eating lamingtons and having a cup of tea and they're just like serving these stories up. So
the privilege was ours, definitely.
Do you feel like sometimes when you're sitting there listening, like we chose the wrong life? Like, like our lives are so boring in comparison, right? Like this, like you say, this happens to them on a weekly basis. These out of this world strange experiences that you can put into a book. Sometimes it makes me feel really boring. I just have a 9 to 5 and come home.
I think Carl and Bobby would make anyone feel boring. They are just endlessly, like Caro said, you go there and they pull out something. When we took the book down there to give them a coffee, and I had my son with me and we went out the back, they've got a pet python. And I said, oh, where did this python even come from? And Bobby goes, oh, yeah, like when we lived in Alice Springs, someone brought in this clutch of eggs and they were all shriveled up. And, they said, I don't know, maybe you can do something with them for the museum because they worked for the museum. And she realized that there were snakes in them and that some of them were still alive. So she hatched these eggs and gave these snakes CPR so that they would come back to life. And then one of them is now their pet. Like 25 years on, they still have this snake.
Sorry. What is that instinct to give us a baby snake CPR? I don't understand.
I don't know.
That would not have been my instinct. I'm sorry.
No. Well, they are very much animal lovers, as are a lot of people who live in places like Larrimah. Yeah.
That's
and
kind of,
just a fearlessness. Like people are just very at home in their environment and
tough. They're tough, right?
Yeah, really tough.
Yeah.
I mean, Bobby is, this slip of a woman, and they were both a volunteer firefighting service and accident service, but like she tells one story about Carl going out of town for the weekend and she like fought full bushfires and attended to accidents, and she's an extraordinary person.
Yeah.
I just seen this comment. Can you see the comments, Kylie?
Yeah, feel free, take a look. Which one are you looking at?
Very slow heart rate. Don't snakes have slow heart rates? I have to say the comments have been the nicest. You've got the most delightful audience here.
They are. They're awesome. They're awesome. Hey, I love them. I really like this question here from Gemma. Are they selling the book at the pub? I imagine they're capitalizing on the success of the book.
I'm not sure, but it is being sold at Fran's. Brent has been selling it. I think he's even signing copies. I think Fran might have signed a copy and sold it somewhere too. So if you can,
I want to see the Fran book tour. I think that would be great. Can we talk really quickly about the tone? Because I love the tone of it. It does feel like, this is why I've got the beer and the flannel on. Like, we're sitting down at the pub, and this is what your book really evokes, I think. Like, we're sitting down the pub, we're having a yarn. But the other thing I wanted to point out, and make mention of, and I just want to talk about the construction of it. I just feel like you were really honoring of all the people there, that you treated them with this innate kind of sense of worth and value as human beings, and you didn't laugh at them. And I feel like, because I watched the Current Affair portrait of Fran, and there's some pretty awful things. Like, the whole tone of it is just sort of to, hey, look at this stupid person who lives in the bush and makes stupid pies. Was that like, I think you're both very kind and lovely people, but was that something that you had to put in work at putting in the book, that tone of a generous spirit towards these people?
Yeah, for sure. It was one of the things that was probably most important to us. And sometimes in those early drafts that we did, we'd take it too far and we'd read it back and go, that is not that person. We're making them out to be something that they are not. And we'd have to rewrite. But certainly, like, we have a genuine warmth for all the people there in Larrimah and the people that we met further afield as well. And we really wanted that to come across in the writing. Because, as you say, you know, we wanted to be respectful and to, I guess, honour, you know, the interesting lives that they've led, and not detract from that by trying to, you know, make judgments or, I guess, yeah, be disrespectful or rude.
Yeah.
I think also just this awareness that, like, you know, that there is a very real trauma at the heart of this, that someone has disappeared, and that none of the context around that is humorous. And I think, like, we wrestled with that so much. I think on our first drafts, we really tried to play it straight. And we just were missing all of the magic of this play. So we knew that had to be in there. But we also never wanted to make light of, yeah, what is almost certainly the loss of someone's life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I saw that Fran especially attracted a lot of really pretty undesirable attention afterwards, where, you know, the headline, I think even of the Current Affair thing, was something along the lines of, you know, did she bake him into a pie? But then she had, you know, the word murderer screamed at her and things like that. That must be awful for her. So yeah, I guess that factors into the tone that you said in the book, right? Was about sort of letting her take the stage a little bit, because she has a story too.
Yeah, and she's a really interesting woman, a really tough woman as well. You know, not many people would decide to open a tea shop in the middle of the outback, you know, so far from, you know, any real regular clientele. She's got to rely on the passing traffic. It's a pretty risky business that she's entered into, and that in itself is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and that she ran it for so long as well. Just she's yeah, that's full on tough. I don't think I could do that at all. Narelle is saying here that she felt a bit disrespectful laughing, but there were some very funny bits. I think that's okay to laugh, because there are some funny bits. I think even the residents would probably enjoy telling these stories and getting those reactions from people, right? I especially liked the chapter titles. I don't know how many people in the comment section just were so, I love them so much. Did you love coming up with some of those?
It was funny. Yeah. We actually didn't have chapter titles, and our editor came back to us and said, you need to have chapter titles. Mm-hmm. We just sat there and went through and were like, let's pick out 3 things, or no, we picked out like a list, didn't we, of each chapter, the things that kind of stood out, or, you know, lines that we thought were funny, and then we narrowed it down to the best 3. And
well, my favorite one was a half liquefied chicken, a pop band attacked by termites, and the word murder. Just, you feel like you're in a pub. You feel like you're about to hear just the best story ever told, right? Maybe, can I get some, if you guys have the book there, can you guys find some of your favorites and put it in the chat? I'd love to see what you guys were thinking about in regard to some of your favorites there. Um, let's go down here just a second. I was interested in the structure of the book because obviously we're focused mostly on the disappearance, the very tragic disappearance of Paddy. And the whole book is sort of diving into his backstory and then the circumstances around that disappearance. But you sort of use that as a way of looking at all of the different areas of the town as well. Did you, when you structured it, did you have like an overarching plan of attack, or did it? Yeah, I guess that's my question. How did you go about putting all this together? There's such a big array of things to put in there.
Yeah, we made that mistake. I think we said in the book at some point that we came in and we were just like, look, it's 12 people. Like, we'll just talk to everyone. It's a pretty neatly contained story. We'll be done. And obviously it turns into this big sprawling mess. I reckon we probably tried 8 or 10 different structures. And it's complicated by the fact that there are 2 of us as well. So like that simple first person didn't quite work. So we've ended up with that collective we voice.
Yeah.
And we knew, like, because we're navigating several time periods, and so I think the most logical thing was to kind of put information mostly in the order that we found it, and then to flash back to that so that there was still that sense of urgency around the case. But it wasn't like we kind of woke up and neatly went, hey, this will work. Like, we tried everything.
Yeah, we really did. And like the problem as well was that we probably over researched. We read, as many books about the outback as we could find. We went through the archives. Cara went all the way down to Adelaide to get this book that this man had written, that he'd served in the war during the war in Larrimah.
Wow.
So, and I went down.
Worth it.
Yeah, it was really worth it.
It's got all
I went down to the archives.
It's great.
I went down to the National Archives and the War Memorial in Canberra.
Wow.
But then what would happen was we'd find something really extraordinary and it didn't fit anywhere, and we'd just be trying to find the spot to put it. And so a few things that we really loved did get cut. But then the one thing that we really tried very hard to get in there, and we were so pleased that we did, was the bachelor pumpkin. So this back during the 1930s, the town of Bachelor, it's an hour and a half south of Darwin, they had this experimental farm there, and they grew this pumpkin, which was the largest pumpkin in the world, apparently. And they, were about to take this pumpkin on a tour of Australia to show everyone, this amazing world-beating pumpkin. And the night before it was due to leave, someone stole it. And they had, trackers out looking for it, and the police were on it, and no one ever found this pumpkin. They found some remnants of it many months later, apparently in the bush. And I came across this story and I just kept hounding Caro, like, how are we going to get this in there? We can't, can we? Like, there's no way. And then somebody gave us a tip off that Paddy's dog Kelly might have been in Bachelor, and we were like, yes, we're going to Bachelor, and the pumpkin has made the cut.
I was going to ask if there were any like massive things that you had to cut, because you wrangle so much in here. There must have been these gems. A few people in the chats have also asked about a sequel too. So is there anything like that really strikes you? I mean, here's an opportunity, right? Is there any big story that you just couldn't fit in there that you'd really love to tell?
It's like, I guess maybe the other stories were stuff that happened in other places or that were totally irrelevant. So we found lots of great stories in Daily Waters, which has its own like kind of checkered wild history. In the book we have we're in Tennant Creek and we're looking for 3 men who are all named Tony, and we don't have addresses or phone numbers for any of them. But in the process of looking for them, we found someone who had this extraordinary story about his family and his links to bushrangers. And so those were the sorts of things that were kind of peripheral to the story, but were incredible things that happened.
Yeah.
And we've done a few kind of spin-off features and stuff like that, but there's probably still a few of those things kicking around that we'd be keen to delve into. I could drive around the outback for the rest of my life, listening to stories and writing.
I think you both have, I mean, people in the chat can probably attest this as well. You're both actually very good at telling stories yourselves. Like, just listening to you talk about them, like it's like you've become expert at the bush yarn. from all this time talking to all these people. Like, that would be such an incredible book series to go and focus on all these different towns and just, bring the populace to life. Like, that's one of the things I enjoyed so much about this book was I felt like I've been to Larrimah, even though I've never set foot there.
One of my favorite stories, I can't actually remember if it made it into the book or not, was this Daily Waters, which is just south of Larrimah, used to have an international airport. So all these planes used to stop in there on their way to London and things like this. And there was like an extraordinary number of, air accidents in that area. I don't know what was going on, but planes seemed to crash there reasonably frequently. So there'd been some kind of disaster where a plane had, not a disaster, no one had died, but a plane had some sort of crash landing and couldn't take off. So then all these smaller planes had to come and pick everyone up. And these two blokes who were going down to Melbourne jumped on a little plane, it crashed. And the other passenger on the plane was actually a crocodile that was being transported to the zoo down in Melbourne. And they crashed in the middle of nowhere. They all survived, except for the crocodile, who they had to eat in order to survive until help came to rescue them.
Well, guess we'll never know the mystery of whether or not that crocodile died of the plane crash or whether or not they had to make a hard choice. Jeez.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it sounded almost like the Australian version of Snakes on a Plane then for a second.
Yeah.
I don't know where that was going. We've got a couple of people saying their favourite chapter titles here. We've got one from Fiona. A face full of grasshoppers, some Russian peanut farmers, and the loneliness of a ghost town. Sorry, just reading these back is so funny. Kalani has said, a pub full of bras, a super mega fugly stunt, and a feed of beef and barra. Man, I love all those things. You must have just had so much fun, like just such a laugh coming up with all that. Can we just say, because we're running out of time amazingly. I don't know how this is happening because I feel like we just started. But there has been a bit of an update in the case, is that right? Like there's some new thing that has been happening in the case of the disappearance of Paddy and his dog Kelly. Are you able to update us a little bit about what's been going on?
Yeah, I'll start you off, and Kylie's got the inquest findings there. So
oh, great.
We covered the first half of the inquest in the book, and we won't kind of go too deeply into it, but it's an unusual inquest for a couple of reasons. So one is that they held an inquest into Paddy's disappearance really quite soon after the disappearance.
Yeah.
And the rationale for that was because there were so many people who were not well or who were aging in town. They wanted to make sure that they captured that information while it was fresh.
Yeah.
And then essentially what happened is that they held that open for almost 4 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
We make the kind of comment that time doesn't exist in Larrimah, and it's happened a bit to us in the process of writing. But it was held open for 4 years, and so probably 6 weeks ago, it would have been April. I was back up in the Territory. Kylie obviously lives there, to go and cover that. So it was a 2-day hearing. There are a couple of new witnesses who were introduced, but probably the big thing that happened was the revelation that police had, with the permission of a warrant, put a listening device in the home of, I believe, both Fran, but also specifically Owen, who was Fran's gardener.
Yep.
And so over the course of 6 months, they played for the court a series of 8 recordings that were mostly Owen either talking to himself or singing or talking to his dog. And many of those, and the transcripts are available online, but there is some graphic detail kind of saying things like, I killerated old Paddy, I hit him with a hammer, those sorts of things.
Oh my gosh.
So he denies that is him that said that. They're really strange tapes. It's really kind of hard to know what to make of them because they're in this strange format. So yeah, that came out at the inquest, and then I'll let Kylie read the findings. Someone's just asked whether the recordings will be released at this stage. I know there's lots of requests in, but they're not released, but the full transcripts are available online, or we've done a couple of bonus podcast episodes with the full transcript or reading of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I'll read the findings rather than try and paraphrase them so I don't get us into any trouble. No arrest has been made or anything like that.
Yeah.
So the coroner said, in my opinion, Paddy was killed in the context of and likely due to the ongoing feud he had with his nearest neighbours. He likely died on the evening of 16 December 2017. He had ridden home from the hotel, put the mostly eaten chicken in the microwave, put his wallet on the table and his hat in the usual place, put the food in the dog's bowl and got his own meal out of the freezer. He then went outside with his dog. There is no evidence as to where he went. However, it is likely that the new plants at Fran's place were of some attraction. The feud with Fran Hodgetts had been escalating. And the coroner has handed these findings on to the Department of Public Prosecutions and the Police Commissioner, and we're just waiting to see what might happen next.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea. Sorry, I hadn't listened to those new episodes. I'll have to go and have a listen to the bonus episodes. But yeah, geez, like that sounds like a massive breakthrough in the case, right? Like that's something that you guys have been wanting for a while.
Yeah, so interestingly, those recordings were actually made over a period of 6 months just following Paddy's disappearance. So I think the device was placed in Owen Laurie's home on about the 28th of December, so only a couple of weeks after Paddy went missing. So the police were pretty interested to know what was going on regarding that feud, I suppose, early on.
Yeah.
So they've had those recordings for quite some time, and obviously it hasn't been enough to make any kind of arrest on anyone. So yeah, it's just kind of waiting to see what might happen next.
Yeah, and I guess you have to be pretty careful around legal findings and things like that, not to insinuate things that we don't know. But yeah, that's incredible that's I mean, that they're still pushing it. They're still trying to search for an answer as to what happened to Paddy and what happened to Kelly. And I guess it's great that there has been some news, that there has been something that's occurred, that we can the case is progressing, I guess, right?
Yeah, I know the police is still really committed to it. The officers who've been working on it say it still keeps them up at night. It will be the sort of single biggest thing in their life as an officer, I'm sure. But I think also, I think one of the things that's hard about it is that for people who love Paddy, it's still not really closure, and it's not a firm answer. And
it's not.
So all the way through it, I mean, we've maybe got more of a sense of it now, but the ambiguity is difficult and it's unsettling, and it's not closure yet. Yeah,
I was going to say that was sort of I love your book, but that was one thing. I don't think it's a negative. I just think it's a different sort of book in that, because it is a true story. Normally when you're reading about a mystery or a murder mystery or whatever the case is, when you're reading it, you're sort of waiting for the twist at the end, and then for the good guys to get the bad guys and the conclusion right. But you have to end it in where we end, which is this ambiguous kind of sense of, I guess, injustice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we really struggled with. I don't know that, we tried very hard, obviously, to try and find out what had happened to Paddy, but I don't think that we, rated ourselves over the police investigators who'd obviously spent a long time, the detectives, working on this case. So it was something that we were kind of grappling with, I guess, the entire time, because we knew that there was a very good chance it wouldn't be solved before we'd finished our book.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kylie. John, sorry, I'm just reading a comment from John saying, such an interesting chat with you both. And John's had a personal connection, which is really interesting too. So that's really great that I guess the people most close to the actual real life case feel like you've done justice to their stories and their life and the personal connections, which, I mean, that's the biggest compliment of all, right? Like, that's what that was what you'd be hoping for above any sort of critical response, I imagine.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Paddy's good friends, Karen and Mark Rayner, who we stay in touch with, they and a few of Paddy's other friends have said to us, Paddy always wanted to be famous. And obviously this is not how someone wants to be famous, but they seem to think that he would be quite chuffed to know that he's remembered and that, there is a record of him.
Yeah. And you actually got to meet him too. So you're writing from a personal relationship that you had with him. You got to hear him speak. You got to actually spend time with him, Kylie, right? What was he like in real life? Like, how would you describe him?
It's so funny. People always ask me this, and I just feel like I don't have a very good answer. He was a guy in a pub that I chatted to, and the thing is, when the guy in the pub is in the Larrimah Hotel, he's kind of competing with a bunch of other people who all have incredible stories. So he was just kind of in amongst them all. But what I did discover when we started writing this book, we went out to a place where Paddy used to work called the Heartbreak Hotel, which is out near Borroloola in the Gulf.
Yeah.
And we realized that he would have been working there. I went through the Heartbreak Hotel when I was a teenager. I went on a school excursion type of thing around Australia, and we ended up going to the Heartbreak Hotel. And what I remember of the Heartbreak Hotel is that this bus full of school kids pulled up, and all the men sitting on the veranda drinking beers all mooned us. They all pulled their pants down. And what we realized when we went out there and met people who knew Paddy from that period, that he was probably one of the asses that I saw on the veranda of the Heartbreak Hotel. So it was a pretty, a bit of a practical joker.
I just feel like that's the most beautiful wrapping up conclusion. Like, we've come home in a very uniquely Paddy Australian way, right? Like, it's so special. Do you mind if I fire a couple of quick questions just from the chat just to finish up? I just think there's some really good ones here. So Gemma's asking that you both never really got to interview Owen, that he was always a bit, I think, reluctant to be interviewed and things like that, kept private. Was that just why you never interviewed him, just because he just didn't want to be interviewed?
Yeah, not for lack of trying. We obviously haven't hounded him sort of current affair style, but we've reached out through other people. We've written a couple of letters. We saw him, and he's just pretty, I think he's a bit of a hermit as well, and he's always kept to himself, and so it's fair enough. People don't want to talk to you all the time, and
not for everyone.
Totally fair.
Yep. And Lisa has asked, have the police actually used any of the information that you've uncovered? Have you been, secretly hired by the police to aid the investigation at all?
No. As I said, I think they have better skills than us in that department. But we did at certain times, people, when we were writing, would come to us, or, people that were interviewing, it would come up in the interview that they had some theory or, something that they thought might have happened to Paddy that did sound reasonable and possible. And we would check those with police, obviously. And they did check out a few of those leads, but none of them have led them to anything concrete.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Susan has said, thank you so much for your dedication to this mystery. And Paddy has left his mark, which is, I think, really awesome that you've helped Paddy become famous. That's really special, I think. And then EJ has said, lovely tale. Found myself smiling so much. Thank you to you both for writing it. I just, feel like there's a lot of love in the chat for the book today. So I really want to thank you both for being a part of the chat. We are unfortunately at the end of our chat time. It's always good to talk to you both. And I guess I'm looking forward to whatever comes next for both of you. I'm not sure what I'm hearing, but I'm sure you're both going to do excellent things, right? Are there anything you want to talk about? I guess we want to go check out the new Larrimah podcast apps, right?
Yeah, those episodes are up now. They're just a couple of short episodes. What's next, Caro? I don't know. We keep saying that we want to work together again because as Cara said earlier, writing by yourself kind of sucks.
Preach.
I really recommend finding a writing partner, Ben. It's great.
I'll have to find someone, for sure.
So I'm working on my my doctorate, which involves a novel. Cara's also written a novel.
Yeah, we're kind of finishing up a few other things that we've been working on for a while, but if anyone's got, we're keen on Outback yarn, so anyone in the chat has a great yarn, get in touch with us.
Oh, that's awesome.
We'd love to do another road trip.
That's so cool. I'd love to have you back for whenever the novels come out.
Cool. Yeah.
Back for Ben's book club again. I want to finish with this. I think this is a beautiful sentiment from Narelle. She said, it's nice that now Paddy is famous for being himself, not because of what happened to him. I think that's really beautiful. So thank you, Narelle. And thank you everybody for being a part of Ben's book club. Next month we are looking at Robert Lucans's book, Loveland, which is, so I think on the 1st of next month, that book becomes available on Libby non-exclusively, so everyone can get it. But I think Larrimah is still there until the end of the month. So if you haven't already checked it out, make sure you do check out Larrimah. Make sure you register for next month as well with the Robert Lucans. I just feel like I'm enjoying doing these so much. Like every month it gets better and better. So thank you, Caroline and Kylie, for being a part of Ben's book club. And thank you, chat. Thank you everyone for being a part of it.
Thank you so much for having us. And thanks for all the beautiful comments in the chat.
Yeah, so lovely. Thank you.
No worries. All right. We'll see everyone next month. Have a safe month. And hopefully both see you soon at something soon, right? In real life, I hope.
That'll be good.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.